This poem, given that it has that big picture of a meadowlark, might be understood as a book about birds, but only a little more than a handful are about birds. But it's structured so that the four sections represent a kind of iconic bird: noise of blue jays, melody of wrens, endurance of robins, and passage of swans. Those poems, the lead poem in each section sort of sets the tone of the book. I won't try to represent the gist of the whole book, but I'll read a few of those poems. And I want to start with one called A Bird Story. As boys with slingshots in the UP, my pals and I roamed the woods, shooting rocks at small things that moved. After missing scores of chipmunks and swallows, they wanted shotguns to bag ducks and grouse. I killed a cedar waxwing, then swore off hunting. Back home with a pocket-sized bird book my mother gave me for my 10th birthday, I stalked tired migrants perched along their flyway in miles-long Burnham Park on Chicago's Lake Michigan edge. From a safe distance in a corridor of trees and shrubs, I spied a wood thrush sitting guard duty on eggs. Today, so much forest habitat has been lost that parasitic cowbirds invade nests and drive down populations. I feel privileged to have watched a thrush nesting in Chicago. I can more easily recall birds' names than those of some human acquaintances. Just one name suits a whole feathered species that reliably shows up every spring. In a mixed flock, how subtly distinct the white-throated and the white-crowned sparrows are. Keeping a life list interests me no more than collecting stamps or antique bottles. Eyes, the most spiritual of the senses, dazzle the soul with cherished sightings. As when indigo buntings fly through sunlight, magically changing from black to bright blue. Sometimes the canopy of deep woods rings with one distant thrush's haunting descant. Hello, you can't see me, here I am. This recluse trills its two voice boxes like Pan's double flute, lifting the soul until no aspiration seems beyond me. When I was in college, I would go home for holidays, and across the street from my parents' house was this middle-aged couple who are the subject of this poem. Yes. When Joe Satori shook my left hand, his grip locked in like a rock crusher. Not so hard, his wife cried. You'll hurt him. I squeezed back with almost equal force for a piss and vinegar moment, as with a smile he growled, yes, yes. Home from college for the holidays, I visited these middle-aged neighbors at my mother's bidding and for fun. Biscotti and red vermouth appeared. Joe smacked his lips. His polished face glowed, and his baritone resounded, yes. Martha talked enough for both of them. Except for his left upper body, Joe was paralyzed. It was from an auto accident. From a wheelchair, he interposed his one syllable with droll inflections or shook his head. His wife assured me, he understands you. She asked parentally about school. As I described my courses, she said, how can your head hold all that knowledge? I hadn't told her how much I forgot. She thought our brains worked like pots. Joe's leaked. I sensed he must have envied me mine. I used to hear them argue next door, she ranting at the end of her rope, he yammering unintelligibly. Pentecostals passing by their house might have thought they heard Joe speak in tongues. He was Catholic, as far as we knew. When I was broke or girlfriends dumped me, and I feared the horrors of life's end, Joe's predicament stormed into mine. Fate gave him one word to last his life. Not a bad choice, I still say out loud to the night sky in witless affirmation. Yes, yes, yes. I took the trouble to get a master's and a PhD in English and came up for a tenure vote at a school that I will call Fooey U. And this poem recounts the experience there at that school. Elegy for Jim Goldwasser, 1939 to 2000. Between our afternoon and evening classes, we ate cheap and talked shop at Maccabee's or Mackenzie Hall. Two instructors out of grad school, we craved to write fine stories and bring as many students as we could by sleigh over the moonlit tundra where Hemingway and Chekhov had left their tracks. Wet the whistle. Walking to class, we would rehearse essentials, have a good joke ready to break the ice, and know beyond doubt that your fly is zipped. When Fooey U denied us tenure, you said, "We've been trying out of better joints than this." How clever you were to find steady teaching in the same town for the next 30 years. I became a nomad in jobs and friendships. That time an aneurysm almost killed you, I panicked, worried your family with calls. The main thing is to survive, and you did, with a wife's care, baseball, and swimming pool. You cultivated new friends into old ones and gave your students reason to revere you. Candid, humane, engaging raconteur, you rarely strove to get work into print. You saw the classroom as your medium and taught compassion through love of the scrawl. Your tadpoles grew into frogs who know what stories sound genuine and why, what gives us hope in life and art, and is most likely to endure. I had a lot of jobs in the meantime, and for about 20 years I taught part-time at that same school, FUU, mostly composition classes. During that time, on a trip back from Boston, where my wife or to-be wife was, we stopped at Walden Pond, and that experience left an impression, an indelible impression on me. And I'd been reading Thoreau since high school. This poem has been anthologized in a book called Echoes from Walden. It's published, it's edited by David K. Leff, L-E-F-F, who has done a great deal of work with the Walden Society there in Concord. And he put this anthology together and was nice enough to include this poem at the end of the group, which chronologically goes through the 20th century. What's left of the last third of the book is more contemporary. But I wrote this at a time when I could see that outsourcing and offshoring was beginning. I had technical writing jobs, one at the General Motors Technical Center outside Detroit. So I could see that, and I could see what was happening to the American workforce. Near the end of the poem, uh, that comes up. Labor Day at Walden Pond for Jim Nani. There's a quote from Thoreau. They know whether they are well employed. Both narrow shoulders of Route 126, marked no standing for 3/4 of a mile past the pond to the Concord town limit, are jammed with cars, single file, parking free. The $4 lot in front stands almost empty. Citizens with the law in their own hands mill through big pines on Walden Reservation. The master's words fly on the cool west wind. Where there is a lull of truth, up springs the state's Department of Natural Resources. Bathhouse, John's, lifeguard, lots of sunbathers crowd the east end. The far shore still looks fresh. Waves peak and sparkle in late afternoon. One frog is croaking to a different drummer. You have to call this much water a lake. A path along the northern shore, the deep side, leads past a cove to a bare clearing where Thoreau lived a year in a shack that cost $62, including food and clothes. No clouds today, no boards left on the site. Small crowd watches where the great man worked more trades than he had toes or fingers. Profit, like the railroad, still rides us. Men with jobs run out of work. We disband toward wherever we must. A shrinking week. Summer is over. For a good while, with friends and with my wife, we've gone to Stratford to watch the plays. We drive from Detroit to Stratford, Ontario, and along the way is the Pinery, which has a very nice shoreline along Lake Huron, and it's great for sunbathing, and that's what this is about. And there are sandbanks. It's a dunes country, so that the bank swallows are near the top of the sand cliff. Bank swallows are black-winged acrobats, flitting over sage and juniper. Their white throats fill with gnats and flies. They catch all day above the bright, hot dunes of Lake Huron. While siskins hide in cool pines and preening kingbirds avoid the hunt, two of these magnificent tricksters squeak, flank, and sally like bats raiding the beach where we swimmers lie like fossils. They take turns plunging scissor tails. Now you see me, now you don't, in under the crest of a sand cliff, staying buried just long enough to feed the young without breathing much air inside, then catapult out into the blue sky. Remember, love, our barefooted climb in dry roots thin as hair up the sliding steep sand hill? The nest's double doors are two holes shaped like half-closed eyes, too small to get a hand through. The mates flutter and scold above us, flashing sharp wings in the burning sun, throwing shadows the size of hawks. Our talk is being heard in somebody else's home. Everybody is scared. How much time is left? Okay, I'll go on. Aerial combat for Camille. A pair of robins built their third nest of the summer in our climbing rose bush. They abandoned one nest after a heavy cowbird's chick suffocated their offspring. Squirrels ate the eggs in their second nest. I watched these skilled masons weaving grass into mud mortar for a deep, bold fortress sturdy enough to last beyond one season. Pitched high among red roses on tough canes, it was protected by a moat of thorns. With tail erect, the incubating female learned to tolerate us passing gardeners. One afternoon, a red-tailed hawk appeared, viewing the nest from a thick phone line. Both robins squeaked an alarm. One buzzed over its head, one perched dangerously close. Eyeing the chicks who filled the nest, the hawk ignored the parents' frantic commotion. The agonizing standoff lasted till two of us waved our arms and shouted. The smug hawk arched its wings and flew away. After the chicks had fledged, I saw the mother perch exactly where the hawk had been. I spoke softly about our recent scare, and she listened thoughtfully to every word. I write songs, and this is my latest. I've been reacting to the way that Joe Manchin and Kirsten Sikkema have been successfully sandbagging the Build Back Better plan. So I wrote this song. Joe Manchin wants to mend the safety net, cover health and dental costs and student debt, childcare for the working poor, keep the oceans from our door. Shy 2 Senate votes, his plan would be upset. Joe Manchin thinks we shouldn't phase out coal. He's pissed off about his party's climate goal. Like a bulldog, he's unbending, picks a bone with social spending, threatens to give Republicans control. Kirsten Sinema gives Manchin her support. Like a poodle with its hair dyed, she holds court. She won't interview or bargain, but she loves to keep on arguing. Corporate lobbies wine and dine her for their sport. These two show dogs lap up their owner's dough. Their constituents face misery and woe. They're against entitlement, but wink at the 1% as they do their best to make the wealth gap grow. They're against entitlement, but wink at the 1% as they do their best to make the wealth gap grow. As they do their best to make the wealth gap grow. And I just found a guitarist who sings it better than I do. So if I put it on YouTube, he'll be probably the one singing it. And then I will read one that people seem to like more than others in this book here. This is called Labor Day at Walden Pond. And it's got a horrible cover. My mother thought so, and the public seemed to also. It got next to no recognition, this book. The other one, the recent one's been reviewed quite a lot. So this is when I was working at a paint store after getting voted down for tenure. And this is back to the days when at the paint store, they mixed colors using little taps of a color, little cylinders, and they had to mix the formula themselves. Nowadays, it's all automated. Tinting celery. Clad in jeans, blonde, how gorgeously she limbered across the waxed tile, dropping 3 gallons of paint with a receipt onto the counter. Blue eyes salvoed her voice's steel complaint. I picked celery, but your clerk mixed it wrong. This silly green's no use, so tint it right. Veterans had warned me not to tint by eye. Follow the numbers in the book, and if they don't like what they bought, sell them new. Too many lonely summer days I'd spent listening to crickets fiddle in the stockroom. Here was a challenge and perhaps a friend. We stirred a can, squinting into the vortex, then brushed the mixing stick. You know, I said, the real paint and its color on the chart sometimes aren't exactly in agreement. Cleavage, showing beneath her shirt's top button, brought on a taste for celery soup. I blurted, you want a gold plume? And got Pascal. Don't get smart, she said. I know my celeries. This is a green they use in institutions. Sorry you feel that way about it. Colors aren't words. Factory scientists brew their hues, then marketeers think up some names. Vermouth, Tuladine red, Ibsen gray. What's in a name? I'll get you the right color by mixing new cans. She wouldn't pay twice. I couldn't give away three new gallons. Celery on the chart resembled pale yellow in leaves of variegated hostas blooming outside the plate glass window. I can't change these cans into celery. Sure you can. I don't expect a miracle of Cana. Guessing what my predecessor had mixed, scaling the quart formula to a cup, I poured small increments of yellow pigment, painted samples of each one, jotted a record. Just before the last trace of phthalo green, she told her name, admitting with delight that this pastel was good enough to eat. Once I'd tinted all 3 of her gallons, she bought a roller and a brush, then left. 2 grasshoppers, drunk on burdock, came breakdancing through the front door, left part way open. We celebrated until closing time. Thank you.